Hey everybody, this is Mike with the One Stop Co-op Shop, and today I'm doing a review of Kingdoms Forlorn, the giant campaign adventure game from the makers of Aeon Trespass Odyssey, and disclaimer that I got a review copy of this one. And Kingdoms Forlorn is one of those gigantic games with so much going on that I think the last time I did this was for Harakiri, but I didn't think it would be fair to the game to do it in the 5-and-5 format, so I'm going to just kind of talk through things in a more rambling fashion, focusing on different aspects of the game at a time, and just try to give an overall feel for what might be great and not so great in the gameplay. So first, let's focus on the characters and the leveling up, since this is a campaign game with persistent characters, these knights. There are 5 of them in the base game. If, like me, you got the first expansion as well, you've got 7 of them, and they each have different health levels, different bonuses they can give as they battle, different special abilities. They often have like special tokens. One of them has a pet monkey. They each have their own unique knight quest with this big booklet that's going to take them in their own storyline arc. But these knights are exciting. They are different from each other. It is a lot of fun to mix and match and examine them. I've not played all 7 yet. And the way they level up is satisfying. It is connected to the story and the campaign structure I'll talk about in a second, but they level up in different pieces. So sometimes they'll get a new peril arc that's going to give them more max life and more of this heat resource that's a mitigating factor for a ton of stuff in the game. They're going to get new heroic arcs that will let them level up during combat and give better bonuses to their compatriots. They're going to get new talent cards that let them use their special abilities and special tokens more effectively. New overall portrait cards that level up their core stats, give them more movement, more free dice in combat. Of course, you're getting new gear. The game is played in 5 different tiers. For each time you get to a new tier, you get all kinds of new stuff to unlock, including merchant gear that you can pay to flip to its forged side and make it even better. And in their unique quests and investigations, they're getting even more equipment and also these new ability cards that are used in both the delve and the combat phase, giving them even more cool options and more unique abilities that are different from all the other knights. And generally, if you're playing the game right, you're always on either a quest or an investigation. If you complete the quest, you're usually going to level up 2 or 3 of these things. And if you complete an investigation, you'll get 1 new ability card or 1 new item or 1 new stat boost. Plus, of course, you're always getting money and getting items from bosses you've defeated and stuff. So generally speaking, while sometimes the leveling can be slower or faster in its pacing, you should be getting something cool pretty much every time you play, which is good because a single session of this game can take 4 or 5 hours, especially when you're learning. So if nothing changed and nothing happened at the end of that time, that could be pretty frustrating. But now, related to the characters, let's talk about the structure of the game, because this is the biggest difference from Aeon Trespass Odyssey. It's a type of structure I've never seen for a campaign game. I think it's generally great, but let me talk through kind of the details in case you might not agree. So each character in their night book has a prologue and then 5 chapters, each with a main quest, and this is going to take them through their own storyline. Yes, the other knights are kind of along for the ride, but in each session, in each expedition, one character generally is going to be the leader, the one who's actually following their main trail of their story. So yeah, just to show you kind of the character sheet that you're like keeping track of stuff up and leveling up with. Each time you play, you're either going on your main quest, you're doing one of 3 investigations in a given tier before you advance to the next tier, and the enemies get harder and you get better items and stuff. Or you can do these more open free plays to kind of catch up on investigations you missed, or just to play with no other expectation of progress. And here's where things can get potentially weird, because if you're playing in a group of 4, one of you can be in a quest and the rest of you can be on an investigation every single time you play. So yes, you have to wait a while if you really want to know what's happening in your character's story. If you really want to get to chapter 5 for Renholder and see the epic conclusion, you got to play not 5 times for 5 chapters, but potentially 4, 8, 12, 16, 20 times. And again, this is a 3, 4, 5, 6 hour game each time you play, so it can be a lot. Now, there are ways to fast track this. If you get leads, you can skip an entire investigation and unlock the bonuses anyway. Also, if you fail investigations and didn't get the bonus, you can use the leads to kind of go back and unlock those retroactively. And the game is fail forward. Even if you fail a quest, it still counts as complete. You're still going to get some level up bonuses. Even if you fail an investigation, it still counts as one of your 3 attempted ones, so you can keep moving forward. But yeah, if you just want to find out what happens in your one character, it's going to feel like a somewhat non-linear or interrupted system, because a lot of the investigation storylines, while they like fill in the general milieu of your character's past, they don't directly continue the main storyline. And if you're playing with only like 1 night or 2 nights or 3 nights instead of 4, you will have some games where nobody has a quest. There is no cool kind of driving storyline to lead you through, and you're all just investigating or doing open plays. And for that, you're really going to have to enjoy the core combat mechanics and the core delving mechanics, because besides just kind of wandering around trying to level up, nothing else is really going on that much. And that being said, all of the core chapters I've played played have been great. The quests will usually have their own unique mechanics, giving you specific things to do during the delve, places you want to discover and track down, ways you want to move, directions you want to go. And sometimes I do wish the rules were a little bit clearer, but generally we've been able to figure out our stuff for all of them. But then you get to go through these little branching paths based on whether you win or lose, based on how quickly or slowly you accomplish your goals. It tends to be very fail forward. The writing is generally great. Yeah, there's like little typos here and there, but generally I've really enjoyed the stories, the different personalities of the knights and what's going on with them. And you even, over the course of these quests, can have these little rapport events with other knights based on who's in your party, which will build up your rapport with each other to unlock cool bonuses if you get to know each other really well, help you tell campfire stories together better. Yes, that is an actual mechanic. And it's also just kind of fun to see the other characters popping in, because otherwise the structure is, again, slightly weird. It's like Ranholder is going to wait to progress their, their core quest for the next 3 plays because some other people have to do their random stuff. It feels a bit like Side Quest the game at times, like a JRPG, but it still works pretty well with that rapport system and you kind of popping up in each other's stories. Now, all this does mean that you're not going to have a large, sprawling overall story for the campaign. It's not like you're battling one giant final boss and trying to discover what's going on with them. These are little separated stories that intersect with each other and you help each other with. For me, it works great. It means the game's easier to set up and play for a while and then put away for a while because I can just jump in with whatever character's story I want. But for people looking for Aeon Trespass Odyssey again, or looking for Oathsworn, games that have one main narrative kind of driving things forward, this might feel like a loss and not everyone's going to enjoy it. With that being said, let's get to one of the 2 main phases in the game, because what you do is you alternate between delving, where you move around an adventure map, exploring, and again, trying to complete any special goals for the quests you're in. Or if you're on an investigation, you're just trying to move in the right direction based on these randomized exploration cards to get clues to unlock your bonus at the end of the play. But at least in the games we have so far, you're going to be journeying through the Principality of Stone or the Sunken Kingdom. They each have their own unique monsters. They each have some of their own mechanics. And this is one giant map that's been cut up. Think 7th Continent or 7th Citadel. And you'll be moving around and you'll see there's these little arrows that tell you where to go in other places. If you find the matching card, they connect so you can slowly build out the map. And a really cool part of this is that, kind of like 7th Continent or 7th Citadel, you can learn where things are. Now, often that won't matter too much because your quests will be telling you to go in very specific directions, or you'll just be, again, moving in sort of random directions to get clues. But there are quests where it's like, hey, find this tile, find this region of the city, and knowing where things are can really help a lot with that. So it's just kind of cool, at least for me as an adventure fan, that you get to know your surroundings and know what's going on in this area. As you're moving around, there are a lot of things to manage. First of all, you'll have a time track that'll generally advance 1 each time you travel, each time you move. In most quests and scenarios, when you reach the 8, you're going to fight your first clash, and when you reach the 16, you're going to fight your second clash. Often that's a failure mechanic for the quest, like you need to accomplish something before you get to that time, and you really want to finish it earlier. You also got threat that's increasing. When you go on the bigger tiles, you're gaining threat. If you go on the smaller tiles and kind of hide from monsters, you're decreasing threat, which is good because if you get too much threat, it can make other cards become nastier, and then also you can spawn these little encounter enemies to chase after you and try to defeat you. I'll talk about encounters later. They are not my favorite, but we'll save that for now. You can also increase your curses, and both of these can cause your expedition to end immediately if you die and get too much. But moving around is interesting. Again, you learn the city, but you have variety in that you have these different exploration cards each time. The directions that are more or less valuable change based on the card on top of the deck for getting those clues. Again, your quests are changing things up quite a lot. And there's also many location cards that have these ciphers, 97 with some asterisks. And the knights that are in the mission will have their own second half of the cipher to finish the number. So you'll get to kind of witness and experience things differently for your character. Again, bringing in all characters, even when it's one person's main quest. And sometimes these things will unlock special bonuses. You'll discover secrets about the kingdom, secret passages that you can get new things for you. You can find these saints that can give you big ability bonuses if you devote to them. So overall, the adventure phase is a lot of fun. It is very quick to resolve, generally. Now, again, that can change based on the encounters, which I'll talk about later. And again, being able to go into a totally different place, and I'm sure if they get more expansions, I think they already have some that are in the Wave 2 content. But if we get more of these kingdoms, there's even more to explore and discover. That's awesome. And just to briefly compare it to Aeon Trespass Odyssey, which also had you moving around in your boat, the Argo, in these things. First of all, this is much better, in my opinion, for my taste, because once you're done with a session, whether that's a 3, 4, or 5 hour session, You can just put all this stuff away. Yes, you have the knowledge of the kingdom, but you don't have to like kind of keep it set up. Whereas in Aeon Trespass Odyssey, they kind of want you to like permanently have the map set up, or at least like have a photo of it or have it on a separate table for the entire cycle of the campaign, because you're supposed to be moving around and around over and over. And also I find this a bit more dynamic with the constant explorations and like the new stuff to discover and the little ciphers and all of that. For my taste, it is just a bit more consequential than Aeon Trespass Odyssey, although still not nearly to the extent of kind of the dynamic exploration of something like Seven Citadel. But to be fair, there's only one aspect of this game, whereas Seven Citadel, moving around these cards and like discovering what's around you, is pretty much the entire experience. By the way, just to note some potential frustrations, sometimes the clue cards just don't like work with you, like the only directions you can go are north and east, but the only clues you need are south and west. Yes, there are mitigating factors that allow you to kind of change that up, but it doesn't always work out for you. Also, sometimes the exploration cards can just do like nasty things to you, like block your way, like lock you out of moving, and you might be forced to go in a direction that's wrong. But like I mentioned earlier, everything in the game is fail forward. So even if you have like bad luck in one delve, one exploration, it's not going to ruin anything. Yeah, you might fail your quest this time, but the game will keep on going and still level you up in other ways. And sorry, another thing I forgot to mention for the delves is that each character has their own unique ability cards. And as I said in the leveling up section, you're going to get more and more of these. They switch to another side for the clash. And these give you cool ways to mitigate your luck. Like you can change up the exploration card on top. You can get the clues you need. You can get bonuses to skill tests and encounters. And the choice of which of these to bring, because as you level up more and more, you're not going to be able to bring all of them by any stretch. And when to use them is really cool. And additionally, whenever you use one of them, you also add a token to the night pool for the upcoming clash. So it gives you kind of double duty to give you a nice boost on the first round of the clash, while also giving you some mitigation in the delve. Just a cool system that makes each character feel pretty unique in how they assist the overall exploration. All right, now let's get into what might be the most important aspect of the game, which are the clashes, the big battles you have twice during each expedition to finish up in a climactic fashion and also to have an exciting midpoint. And first of all, just to note, if you've played Kingdom Death Monster, or even more applicably, if you've played or seen Aeon Trespass Odyssey, there's a lot of similarities here, especially with Aeon Trespass. They pretty much ported it over the same system with some additions. And first, not to mince words, this is an amazing combat system. I liked it in Aeon Trespass Odyssey. I think it's even more exciting and varied here, especially because whereas in Aeon Trespass, it was pretty much always just a big monster and all of your 4 people fighting against him. Now you also have the variety of these mob fights where it's a bunch of different enemies attacking you in different ways. And also, while Aeon Trespass Odyssey in a given cycle might only have you fighting the same 2 or 3 or maybe 4 bosses in a row, this one has, even just in the core box, I don't know, like 16, 18, just a ton of different bosses to fight against. But yeah, if you haven't heard about Aeon Trespass Odyssey before, let's go through some of the coolest aspects of this. So generally, the enemies always activate first. They flip a card and it'll tell you what they do, who they're targeting, what they're going for. There is some consistency in what these enemy attacks are like, especially as you get to know a given boss. But there's also some nice variety in what they do, and the rules tend to be very clear for how to resolve all of this. Now, in that enemy activation, something that I think they got from later cycles of Aeon Trespass Odyssey, but I haven't seen it in many other boss battlers, it might be hit or miss for some people, is the fact that enemies have infinite movement. So generally speaking, no matter how far away you are, they will be able to track you down and attack you if their card says that's what they're doing. Now, personally, for me, I like this rule choice because I often find it kind of cheesy in these sort of boss battling games when you can be just one space out of range of enemies and then they can't reach you and they waste their entire turn. So this infinite movement mechanic kind of ensures that things stay exciting, that you can't just kite away from enemies, but you do still have ways to cleverly use these reflex abilities to move out of the way before like a zone attack hits or before somebody tries to charge at you and smash into you. So there are still ways to dodge and use tactical movement to your advantage. It's just not cheesy in my opinion. Another core aspect of the combat here is that for enemy attacks, you are rolling for defense. They are always assumed to hit if you don't roll well. But of course, depending on your inventory and your build, you can find lots of ways to improve your evasion, to get armor against attacks. So enemy attacks and reacting to them and defending against them all works really well. On the hero side, all 4 of your characters will take turns one after another. You can move and then do one attack action generally. And yes, sometimes your characters can be out of position and not be able to attack anybody, especially if they got shoved by a monster or something, but usually it's pretty easy to get into the thick of things and you don't waste actions just moving around. Combat is again dice-based. You're usually rolling first to see how much you hit the monster, and then in a second roll based on that first, you roll more or fewer dice to get swords to break through their armor. And these rolls, both for the combat and for the evasion and in the rest of the game, are pretty mitigatable. You can spend this resource called Heat, which is limited, but you get a lot of back every turn to re-roll dice. So usually if you're setting yourself up with bonuses and such to hit a monster, you're going to be able to hit them almost all the time. When you hit monsters, again, this is straight out of Kingdom Death Monster and Aeon Trespass Odyssey, although again, much closer to ATO. You'll flip over a BP card to show like which part of the body you hit, or for these mobs, which of the mob monsters you're actually fighting. And you'll have to reach a certain threshold to actually wound them, and when you do, they can react in lots of fun ways, and if you get a crit, often you get bonuses immediately. And again, just like in Aeon Trespass Odyssey, as you wound the enemies, they replace their weaker AI cards with stronger ones, and they replace their weaker body parts with stronger ones, so the game ramps up in tension and the power of the enemies. But at the same time, every time your characters attack, you raise up your passion level and unlock more and more bonuses for yourself, so you both become more powerful and more awesome as the combat goes along, which is kind of a core idea of both Aeon Trespass and this one. And then another core aspect they brought back from Aeon Trespass is the pool idea. Each time you attack, at the end of your attack, you're going to leave tokens for the next character, more as you level up that passion track. And these are mitigating tokens that give you a better chance of hitting, a better chance of breaking through armor, other cool abilities. So whether you're playing solo or cooperatively, there's a lot to think about here in how you help your fellow fighters, what order you attack in, who needs bigger or smaller bonuses depending on which character is giving them to them, who you're going after in any given moment. And the puzzle of the different fights, the different abilities they have, especially as they level up throughout the campaign, can really change up your strategy, which terrain you're dealing with, all that kind of stuff. Just an awesome, consistently tense, consistently exciting combat experience overall. Now let's talk about some potential negatives in this aspect though. First of all, the big one, this was also the case in Aeon Trespass Odyssey, is just keyword and special rules overload. So look, these are the rat wolves. This is one of the much more simple enemies you can face early on. But even at level 1, you got to read all this stuff, I guess just that, to figure out how to play with them. And then as you get on into later levels, they keep on adding more traits, more special rules, more bonuses that are automatically applied that are easy to forget if you're not paying attention. And you got to go through this every single time you fight a different monster, which suddenly makes that amazing variety I talked about, all the different monsters you can face off at, a little bit intimidating because especially the first time you're facing a monster and just getting their basic rules down, it can be pretty confusing. But at least for me and my experience having played a lot of these games, once I played a monster once, maybe twice, I felt pretty comfortable with their core rules. They don't tend to add that much new at each new level, so since you're not leveling up to new tiers incredibly quickly, the game kind of onboards you and makes it easier for you to figure out the new stuff you have to deal with, and the monsters do become incredibly more difficult, but you're leveling up too, so it keeps things, again, varied and tense, I think. But yeah, some people are going to be scared away by this, and there are sometimes rules questions on how things work. It can be a little confusing at times. Also, despite the mitigations, sometimes you botch a core roll and don't have the ways to mitigate it that you need, and like have to fight an entire extra round and the monsters kill more of your guys. That can be frustrating. Sometimes drawing these Mortis cards that you get as you take damage can make you get like the best effect ever, like an exciting bonus for getting hurt, or just get murdered and not realize that was going to happen. I think that all adds to the dynamic nature and cinematic nature of the combat, but it is going to annoy some people who are randomness averse because sometimes things just don't go your way. Now, the entire game is very much fail forward, so it's not like you have to repeat a fight or restart the entire campaign. But yeah, it might annoy some people with its random elements. Oh, another thing I forgot to mention are the ability cards. Just like in the adventure mode, you have these cards. It's the same ones that get flipped over from the delve. And I will admit that in the early game, some of the ability cards you start with could be more dynamic and more exciting. A lot of the knights start with the exact same basic ones because they are kind of core abilities you want to always have access to. But pretty quickly as the campaign goes on, you'll unlock more of those abilities, give you more interesting choices. And the fact that all of these can be alternatively used for another effect, generally mitigation and things to like help you get a better roll, makes it a pretty cool mechanic overall that integrates seamlessly into this core combat system. Oh wait, one more important thing to mention for the combat. Sorry, I totally forgot to say this. The game does offer you Squire characters, so you can play with just one knight, 2 knights, 3 knights, 4 knights. You can do however many you want. But because of all the special abilities and items, and because of the ability cards, for me personally, I was two-handing with 2 knights most of the time. 3 or 4 felt like it would be a bit too much. So Squires will fill in the party because you always need 4 characters, and I think these work great. I would say better than the ones in Oathsworn for my taste, better than some of the other recent games I've seen that have had this sort of like companion system. How it works is you get these different Squires, and they themselves will level up with the tiers, so you get better and better statistics with them. They still use the core statistics you have, heat for mitigation, passion as you attack to level up and give better and better things to the other players, and their vigor for their life. But besides the cards themselves leveling up, you can give them merchant items to give them more options for mitigating their attacks. And then also this Squire metal deck is leveling up, which is going to be used to determine all of their attack rolls, all of their abilities. And yeah, as you play through the game, you're going to get rid of more and more of these weaker start tier cards and add in the vassal tier and king tier, devil tier, dragon tier. It's a really smooth way, again, one of the smoothest I've seen for these companion kind of characters, to keep them in line with your characters, to level them up, but also just to speed through things, because you don't have to like resolve all their abilities and count as many things and roll all the dice. You're just flipping cards, seeing what happens. It's really smooth, really well integrated, and makes it, I would say, quite a pleasure to play with 1 or 2 knights, or maybe even 3 if you can handle that, and fill in the rest. I mean, even when we played with 3 actual players, we still had 1 Squire, and that worked out great, just kind of sharing the control of them. So yeah, nice job to Kingdoms Forlorn. This is a great system. Now, switching to something combat related still, but more negative, although this actually happens during the delve phase and not the clash phase. I'm talking about a new element that was not an ATO called encounters. So sometimes monsters will be chasing you on the delve map, and if they catch you, have an encounter. Often during somebody's quest, an encounter will be forced on you. And these are single round combats, basically. You randomize where the enemies and allies are located. The enemies attack in a very basic way, just like based on where they're facing and who's near them. Your people get to attack once if they're in range. And then depending on how many successes or failures in those attacks, you get a different result. It'll level up your characters slightly, raising their passion for the next combat. That's pretty cool, but it could give them some negative aspects to deal with as well. And that is interesting. Those little bonuses give a bit more texture to the final clash when you get to it, because you're coming in wounded. You're coming in with bonuses to your combat. And also, to be fair, these things are incredibly quick once you kind of know how they work, although the rules are a bit more vague than I would prefer compared to the rest of the rulebook. But once you know how they work, you can set up an encounter and play through it and tear it down in, 4 or 5 minutes. But these are still probably the most negative thing I have to say about the game, since they are a new addition to the Aeon Trespass formula, because they just aren't that interesting and aren't that impactful to force you to set up an entire thing. Like, you have to take out the entire clash board, get the minis you aren't using for a current fight. You got to put all this stuff together. And again, this game is giant. You, unless you have multiple tables, will not be able to set up the delve and the encounters at the same time. So you're pretty much forced to just like put this encounter board, or at least part of it. I will say you can unfold the board in different ways to only expose the board you need usually. But you'll have to put this whole giant thing on top of the delve map you're exploring. And again, get out minis, do all this stuff, and it just doesn't matter that much. And sometimes, because of quests, because of bad luck with encounters, you'll have like 3 or 4 of these before you actually finish up your delve and get to the clash. And they just feel kind of annoying. Honestly, at this point, I'm considering this house ruling to like skip them or, like automatically apply some pluses and minuses whenever I have one. Because there's no interesting tactical movement. Like, you're just rolling some dice and putting people down and making like the most basic of choices. And again, just gaining some bonuses and penalties that could have just been a paragraph in the book. So they're quick enough to not be a major bother for me. They're easy enough to just speed through and not worry about. But yes, I do not enjoy these. I think they're a distraction from the rest of the great gameplay. So encounters don't work that well for me, sorry. So yeah, Kingdoms Forlorn, gotta say, this is now one of my favorite games of the year easily. I mean, it's also one I don't know how much time I'll have for it. And with my never-ending stream of review copies that I gotta cover, I can't focus on one game as much as I would like. But I think it's very telling that I've wanted to play this one more, and I've done extra plays beyond what I needed just to cover it, because the character stories are so compelling, because the leveling up is exciting and rewarding, because the combats and the adventures are tense and varied and fun. Yes, sometimes the structure's a little weird. Yes, I don't find the sessions where I'm just doing investigations and don't have a main quest to be nearly as exciting without the narrative component. But the ability to play the game for a while and then switch to another knight and play as them, to bring your knights to another player's game session and just kind of join their adventures, yes, you can do that, because they have this really slick system where if you're playing with a character who's way weaker or stronger than you, then they just kind of give you automatic bonuses or penalties to make your level and theirs match up. It makes Kingdoms Forlorn unique among campaign games. I've never seen one like this, and I think it's doing awesome stuff. I'm so impressed by the team. I want to see them in that Wave 2 content release more kingdoms, release more characters, although, again, will I have time to play all of it? Probably not for many years. But I think despite the box being ginormous, I'm going to keep it around because I want to play more. I want to dig deeper. There is a lot to have fun with here. But thanks for watching, everybody, and a special thank you to our biggest Patreon supporters, J. William F., Steve Wren, Pedro Lucas, Miles, KCW, Andrew R., and Chris C. We'll see you at the next stop.